And hello there, everyone. We are Villa Kino, and we are going to be getting straight into some Andor spoiler chat because that was an amazing episode. We love doing these chats where we jump onto SWTOR and get stuck into just talking about the most recent episode of Andor that's just screened. I am playing a smuggler. She's an Autolan, Nerinas, and Matt is playing one of his troopers.
Another Commando, Vinnoch is his name. Kind of built this guy based on the availability of the armor. So he's a slight variant on my other Commando.
So I guess we'll get stuck into doing some of these heroics so we can get started talking about all the goodness in that episode. Let's go start with the long goodbye. Try and pick like a themed planet or a character to play while we do this, but this one was such an unknown episode. I really didn't know what the vibe was going to be, so I was like, I'll just pick a classic planet that we know well and we love.
Yeah.
And I'm decided to go with a smuggler because that kind of feels a little bit Cassian themed. But we had a feeling that there might be some troopers in this episode. So that's why Matt decided to bring Vinnoch along, and he was right. And of course I'm playing a character that I haven't played in forever. So forgive me if I'm a bit fumbly as I remember how to play this girl.
Yeah, we had a little bit of information ahead of this episode. I think the director is the same director as the first 3 episodes. And also from memory, we know that this episode, based on information from Tony Gilroy himself, that this episode was going to be a bit more of a standalone episode. Each of the blocks where a director has sequentially directed episodes, they formed a distinct chapter. So we had 3 episodes with one director, then 3 episodes with another director. This one, as I said, was standalone, so kind of fit that this one might be one that started to have flashbacks. I mean, the clone troopers existed in the trailer, so there's a little bit of a prediction there. The thing that really struck me about this episode is how the action was still sparse and scattered around, but everything still feels so much on edge. Everybody's story is at a very tense point.
Yeah.
That's what I sort of took away from it. You know, it's something that's insanely tense. The tension between Mon Mothma and Luthen Rael, as well as Mon Mothma and their overall position. And she straight up said that, I'm kind of jumping around a bit, we can go back to the start in a second. She straight up said that her driver was an ISB plant.
Yeah.
In this episode, so and you know, the tension between Andor and his mother back on Ferrix, and the revelation that she's sick of everything to the point where she considers herself a rebel.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it just, like I say, it just all felt really, the tension was just insane. It was
Hello,
really
Shalari.
things are building up to a big head.
Shalari says, loved the most recent episode. Well, I'm glad you loved it. I really enjoyed it. I was not quite sure what was going to be happening in this episode. And yeah, the tension is still there. I feel like, I guess we know that the tension is just going to sort of keep building, like, because this is supposed to sort of lead into Rogue One. So we know that there's no sort of relent from the Empire. You know, that's where the original trilogy comes in.
Yeah, it's a big step up. I mean, the extra powers given to the ISB that we saw early on, and that was with Yularen, head of the ISB for Colonel Yularen, who appears in New Hope and of course back in Clone Wars. The additional powers given to the ISB, the fact that he has the heir of Palpatine name dropped, Emperor Palpatine, of course.
Yes.
There's big developments in the Empire that's going to have a galaxy-wide impact. I thought that was pretty interesting.
Yeah, and I was like taking note of all the sort of like measures that they were going to be putting out, and I didn't actually think that we would see Andor getting the rough edge there at the end.
Oh yeah, no, that was cool. The KX droids were first introduced to in Rogue One, obviously, and they had a soft edge because of K2SO being fully reprogrammed. But when they used the KX droids in Book of Boba Fett flashbacks for
they're so menacing.
They really built some real sinister edge to them, that I really like. Something like the way they just move slowly and with precision is really intimidating, and they carried that through seriously well in that episode there. Real Terminator vibe, obviously.
Cool.
What's the opening scene? So my mind was jumping to the ISB scenes, which I think was the second thing we saw. Was the very opening scene Cyril Khan on Coruscant with his mother? Was that how this episode actually happened?
Pirate bullies. We're done here.
Oh, sorry. Okay. Sorry, I'm just a bit trigger happy there.
Yeah. Yeah. And his story is progressing slowly, but I'm still interested in where he's going. So we saw him, his mother basically critiquing his choices in apparel. He's still very exasperated with his position. And then we see throughout the episode, we see him basically at his job interview in a massive office building where everyone's in tiny little cubicles.
It was intentionally bleak and demoralizing, the job that he's been forced to take.
And the shot at the end... Oh, sorry, keep going.
The conversation he had with his supervisor was very telling, because he revealed that he wanted to clear his name by finding the showing that he was correct and that his actions on Ferrex were justified on the whole, even though the outcome wasn't ideal from his point of view. So I think he is actively pursuing avenues to clear his name.
And it sounded like at the end of that interview, the supervisor, the guy doing the hiring, was something like, "Oh, let's just edit that record before we get you started." He believed
the story and his value.
Yeah, well, the guy seemed to be that very straight-laced, everything by the book type guy, but seemed to appreciate the story, the explanation of his record at least, and gave him the job. And then right at the end, we see him sitting in his office, and I don't know if it's supposed to convey a dejected type attitude, or the fact that he's haha, I'm finally back in, first step, on the rung to getting back to where I was type thing.
You're right, it's not 100% clear. I don't think this position is necessarily going to give him access to resources in this way, because it's a very low-level job.
But he has seen on the news about the Aldani. I thought that was interesting.
Yeah.
I was kind of expecting to become
evidence.
News, and then they would have images of who they thought would done
exactly.
it,
but there's no evidence at this point that Andor to the outsiders that Andor is involved, so he doesn't have that information yet.
Yeah, because we don't know how much the Empire has on a dossier of people that committed the crime yet. We don't know if anybody, somebody's going to put two and two together. Especially if the ISB agent and her pulling everything thing, whether she figures out that the same person that stole the Starpath unit is the same one that committed the heist. And I loved her trajectory in this episode as well.
Yeah. Well, the other thing that, so just turned around Cyril Khan and Andor, and the other bit that really stood out the early conversations between Mon Mothma and Luthen Rael, but then subsequent to that, Luthen Rael's shop assistant, who clearly has a role in the Republic, met with Val on Coruscant. Mm-hmm. That was kind of unexpected to see that. Well, to see the detail of that interaction.
Yeah. We'll go down the hole. David West says, "Hi guys, wow, that was an interesting episode." Yeah, there's a lot to unpack there. And I thought that sort of, I don't know why I didn't recognize the lady with the straight hair wearing the red hood that we had seen in the trailer. I don't know that, like, I'd put two and two together that was Luthen's shop assistant.
No,
I don't know why I hadn't, not recognized her. Yeah, she looked so different. It wasn't until she sort of started talking, I was like, oh my gosh, it's her. Yeah. That she's kind of, well, could be a disguise. It could be like this is her sort of regular sort of Coruscant attire as opposed to sort of her professional work sort of uniform.
Yeah.
And it was really fun seeing Val all sort of Coruscant glam as well.
Yeah. But the interesting thing was the power she seemed to hold that kind of implied status within the Republic, that her interaction with Luthen.
Well, thinking back, she told off Luthen in a previous episode about sort of listening to the radio for updates and stuff like that. And we see that, she might play sort of just a shop assistant role sort of as a face, but she is very important.
Yeah, so really climbing the chain there in terms of players in that game.
Yeah.
Yeah, Dave's saying and Val looked very different as well.
Yeah. It took me, I didn't recognize either of them. I'm like, okay, we've got a new story arc here. And then when they started talking, I was like, oh my gosh, this isn't not a new story arc. It's just now we kind of see how the connection was between how Luthen managed to put together the sort of the heist, as it were. And we see that he wasn't exactly on the same page as Mothma regarding that.
That kind of surprised me a little bit as well, because it wasn't clear earlier on that they had different tactics or different philosophies in mind. I kind of assumed that she knew that the essence of the Albani heist.
Yeah.
But it seems like she didn't at all.
Because she didn't even seem to know that he had anything to do with it, and he kind of basically confirmed it, saying like it had to be done.
So there's a lot of pieces that aren't connected. He's doing things for the rebellion in terms of raising money. She's doing things for the rebellion and raising money.
Yeah.
And like I say, not quite on the same page yet, which is curious.
Yeah.
Curious. I don't know if that's because they do have
whether
he
will be sort of the Saw Gerrera aligned, where you sort of got to people get hurt, but you've got to take drastic measures to win, as it were.
Well, that's the thing. He straight up said as well that people are going to get hurt, but it's necessary to wake the galaxy up.
Yeah.
To the effect of the
because if the Empire stays in power, more people will die. Sort of in the long run.
Yeah. Early, and the people that die are a necessary cost.
Yeah, I mean, we're seeing already that people are, that flashback scene with his father, simply like throwing rocks at the clone troopers was enough to sort of be seen as an insult or an attack to warrant a death sentence. And it's kind of sad that we essentially, well, not that it's a death sentence, but we get a bit of an echo with Cassian receiving a similar kind of just wrong place, wrong time, and copying it. And I don't know, like I almost want to see him somehow like reprogram an Imperial droid and have like the beginning of K2SO, but man, I don't know how he's going to get out of this. If he couldn't escape from an Imperial droid, I don't know how he's going to escape out of an Imperial prison.
No, that's a really significant development.
We don't know if somebody's going to break him out, somebody that sort of finds out what happens to him.
But jumping back, just talking about Andor before he left Ferrix and into the resort planet, which is kind of cool. The interaction with his mother. What's that?
The planet, I think, was called Niamos.
Yeah, the kind of thing. I thought that yeah, the conversations with his mother were again on the tense and on the edge, mostly because everyone was shouting at the screen, just tell her,
Yeah.
get on the same page.
Yeah. Well, I think we're really getting a sense of a lot of people having sort of like coming to terms with the way that they feel about the Empire, but then they're not really sure who they can trust, and we're seeing that. Yeah.
Well, I think what the story is also telling us is that Andor himself isn't a rebel yet.
Yeah.
He walked away from the heist. He didn't stay. Didn't say, "What else can I do?" Etc.
He's not quite as self-serving as Skeen.
He's not self-serving, but he is for self-preservation.
Yeah.
Self-preservation.
Like he's still got a little bit more sort of honor than Skeen, because he could have taken all the money, but he only took what was sort of like what he agreed.
Yeah. Hey, just as a side note, in a moment of foreboding, I think someone pointed out online in last week's episode. What's his name? Vinnoch said to Andor, "Your sleepiness is over." When he was talking about when he can't sleep, he writes. He said to Andor, "Your sleepiness is over," which was kind of on the nose in terms of the outcome of Rogue One.
We'll go to breaking the code. The sort of the resort planet. It was kind of interesting, sort of like seeing just how heavy the Imperial presence was, and I think that was perhaps like something that Andor's mother knew, because she was like, "Go where? They're everywhere."
Yeah.
And he was like, "No, we'll go like
They didn't even tell us what the heck was going on, what he was actually involved with. We really saw it through his eyes. He was just confused by why he'd been pinpointed by the...
Well, yeah, because there were clearly people running, and they were like, "Well, you were there. How do we know that you weren't running away from stormtroopers for sneaky reasons as well? So we just lock you up just to be on the safe side, you know?" Yeah, and we're getting a sense of the Imperial justice system. It's just like, nope, this is what you've been charged with. Here's your sentence. Off we go. On to the next one.
It was kind of curious because they were wearing Imperial uniforms, but it looked a bit more like almost felt like a bit of a kangaroo court setup. Like they'd been given some power, but went under direct control of the Empire, and just sort of being really heavy-handed because of that sort of power that didn't have any oversight.
Mm. But it was very cool seeing short troopers.
Yeah.
And seeing the clone troopers in the flashback. And we finally saw stormtroopers. Not a lot. And yeah, it was kind of sad that he didn't really seem to realize that the people that he left behind on Ferrix were going to be upset with him. He seemed surprised.
Yeah,
that they would blame him for basically the Imperials, because it was all kicked off by his actions. It wasn't like a conspiracy that a group of friends were going to do something. It was he was trying to track down the sister, and accidentally killed people, and one accidentally, one not so accidentally. And interesting that the mother was like, "Stop looking for your sister."
I don't think she knows. It
sounded like something happened, because she was like, "No one survived," and she said it wasn't your fault. Like, so we knew that there seemed like when they rescued him, they seemed to imply that whoever was going to find the ship and find that somebody was shot or attacked, that they were basically, that they knew that he would be killed. But I guess they sort of sought out the sort of local cluster of kids, and I guess they were all killed. Or
if we get flashbacks to that, that'll be something.
Yeah. But yeah, we don't seem to be getting flashbacks that he isn't aware of. Most of the it was a little hard to see. There was a flashback to what I assume was Clem's hand, when he was hung. And I think that is
scene.
supposed to be like Cassian in the background walking past. He's remembering that he walked through the square and saw him, because the mother said she couldn't. That even to, you know, up until very recently, she still couldn't do it because it just hurt.
Susan Cheney's picked up a Millennium Falcon, an MGS.
Thanks.
It's a cool line, eh?
Yeah. It's so detailed, and it's got some fun things. You know, a little bit of fun for the child and all of us, but not too much of a toy. That it's got sort of, you know, gimmicky bits and pieces on it. I thought the detail was really good.
Just in the process of, we've got a few more videos to get up, but we'll have a Razor Crest. A look at the Razor Crest very shortly. Can't think of any good vehicles.
Yeah, I was just thinking that. I was like, did we get...
It's Lethan Rail's spaceship at the big team scene. I don't know if it's significant enough.
We saw, was it Cinta's speederbike? And we saw the Star Destroyer overhead. We've got a lot of trailer shots in this one. The shot of like Mon Mothma getting out of her ship, and the shop assistant whose name I keep forgetting, in the sort of spaceport. Yeah. And finally, like I wasn't exactly sure where Cyril Khan and his mother were. And then actually going back and sort of confirming it. Where am I headed? Do we finish this? Oh, yeah. Okay, so we're finished. Reap the Whirlwind. So yeah, confirming that he is on Coruscant. I wasn't sure because it didn't like. I wasn't sure if it was just sort of felt like Coruscant or sort of another tall sort of city centre or.
Yeah, in the episode where he first went back to his mother's apartment, there was a sort of a different feel from the Coruscant we've just been looking at. Yeah. So it wasn't clear, but in this episode,
so I wasn't sure if it was
Coruscant
just
that matched. So I did kind of
because the area where Val and the shop assistant were meeting looked very close to his apartments.
Exactly. Yeah. There was a lot of that architecture.
Yeah.
Style.
So I don't know if it was just to sort of represent, and I don't know what the secret symbol on the floor was that it was the shop assistant it looked like a circle with a line through it. Yeah, so mark, yeah. So we're already getting sort of a little bit of an underground sort of like network being established here. Oh, this girl can pick up me too.
The info center where info center where Cyril works is kind of creepy. I think it's it's like I say supposed to be demeaning and but it's a little bit it's that cliche of the sort of American 50s menial job.
But he took it.
Yeah.
Because he didn't look desperate, but he looked like he really wanted.
He's not
keen
the
to
sort
get
of person to sit at home and do nothing. He is needs to do something on his path to redemption.
I'm still a little bit lost for my own sort of I don't know feelings on where he's going to end up though. I'm still not sure. Like it's interesting that we're still following his story, but it'll be interesting to see how it's going to tie into the larger plot.
Yeah, well, kind of because the characters on some level like him, we wouldn't mind it if he went turned rebel.
Yeah, I don't know if we're gonna get sort of like
I can see the path to that.
Yeah, we don't know whether he's like gonna get revenge or gonna sort of try and get revenge and get caught and just basically sort of executed by the Empire, or like who knows, is he gonna get commended? I really don't know, and I guess that's good storytelling. We don't know which way. He's kind of an interesting character to read. We can tell how sort of fed up with his position he is, but I still can't get a solid read on him. And he seemed really fascinated by the Aldani news, even though it didn't mention anything about Andor.
I don't know if he's got his suspicions, or if he just or if he's just seeing the rebellion, interested because he sees the rebellion everywhere.
Yeah. Like that particular moment made me feel like that he's too sort of law and order to be on the rebellion side, but we know that even people on the side of the Empire, once they see what the Empire does, they know it's not true law and order. It's, a very corrupt, controlling, and deadly. Like we saw, is it Tim on Ferrex learn the hard way? That, thinking you're doing the right thing by sort of informing on troublemakers or whatever, just often doesn't exactly earn you a special place. It just ends up they don't actually care and you get killed in the crossfire. But interesting that everyone knew that it was Tim that basically, like, they didn't say exactly how. I guess it just got out through sort of the underground network.
I'd have to go back and look at the details to see what evidence there was.
Or whether because he was sort of killed by troopers. I don't know that we necessarily saw any other locals killed by the forces. But yeah, that's going to take a bit of a repeat watching to double check.
The thing that they're unhappy about, the locals are unhappy about, is just that iron fist of the Empire sort of now in their face.
Yeah.
All their freedoms, their way of life is gone there. They were previously able to function as they had done for some time, largely independent of.
Well, they still had a bit of an underground. But yes, it wasn't so it was still better than the Empire, and they were keeping that sort of tenuous balance that Andor has destroyed.
The Empire's, the sort of devil you know sort of thing. The Empire's
Yeah, they were sort of keeping a low profile because they knew that the Empire would be worse, and Andor, unfortunately, through his own sort of personal mission, has completely upended that for everyone. It looked like his mother, when he left and she kind of turns around, it looks like she picks up a blaster off the table.
No, I didn't see it.
She picks something up when she's sort of facing away. It looks like she picks up something. Yeah.
Even though he's left home and now in jail elsewhere, their involvement in the rebellion's got to rear its head in some form.
Yeah.
It's good to see B2 again, even though he wasn't allowed to speak.
It's still so cute though. Like it's quite fun. How sort of personality-wise some of these characters can be, even though they don't. Yeah, as you say, don't get to say much. It's cute.
I hope when assume when he said that all three of us, or just the three of us, will leave, he was talking about B2. He did seem to touch B2's head in that way that people in Star Wars sometimes interact with droids.
Yeah.
Keeping his sentience.
David says, yes, I saw that. It looked like a blaster rifle. Yeah.
Okay, cool.
I guess she was worried that perhaps somebody would come knocking because they might have seen. She's worried that, because Andor has visited.
He asked who's gonna find out how we're gonna find out. She straight up said that she's gonna get involved in if he stays around.
Yeah.
It's just inevitable. There's too many people who dislike him or are aware of some sort of reward or whatever.
And I think it showed sort of that her character has gotten to the point where she's sad, she's old, and I guess the hurt of the past and knowing that perhaps she'd rather, if she's going to die soon, she'd rather, as Luthen says, give it all for something rather than just sort of cowering for the remainder of her days.
Yeah.
So it sort of, I guess, indicated her desire to fight, to pick up arms, literally, against the Empire, which is really quite neat to see. She's clearly not we saw her at when Andor was young. She's clearly capable, but we haven't seen her in combat, and she looks not frail, but older. She's using a cane.
Yeah.
So really interesting to see at what capacity we might see her in the sort of rising up against the Empire on her planet. Oh, I left booms out here.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, that's because the droid shoots these guys out of the back.
Yeah. We'll do a Jawa's concern. What else was there? We talked about Yularen.
Yeah, we won't. I mentioned them by name. It was great getting that kind of stuff.
I didn't pick that up straight away. I should have.
No.
But it wasn't until the credits I saw Colonel
name.
Yularen, and I was like, oh, of
I don't
course.
think they spoke his name. They just referred to him as Colonel at some point.
Yeah.
I think. But yeah, they've obviously got a different actor.
Yes.
From the person who played Wolf Yularen in A New Hope. Would have basically just been a featured extra back then.
Yeah.
Before the character had a backstory.
Yeah, because he was included in the storytelling for both Clone Wars and Rebels.
Yeah.
It
always kind of surprised me a little bit, just as a side note, that he, because he was working with the Republic and with Anakin.
Yeah.
As a Jedi, as a pre-Vader Jedi. Kind of surprised me that Yularen turned from that position to being so high in the ISB.
You don't know if it's
kind of curious what the motivation behind that was. They seem like different characters, but
he's the sort of person that's always on the side of law and order.
Yeah, sure.
But yeah, because I mean, from a sort of stricter viewpoint, I guess, or a certain point of view, as everyone would say, the Galactic Senate was like the side of law and order, and then like the Galactic Empire essentially is that, just with Palpatine in permanent charge. So I guess some people sort of don't see that clear distinction between the two. I mean, I guess that's why the Empire worked, didn't it?
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of people joined the Empire when it was becoming established because they thought it was the right thing to do.
Yeah, they would think it's just basically the Galactic Senate with a name, the Galactic Republic just with a name change, and you don't have to keep voting for Palpatine. He's just in charge.
But Yularen name dropped Palpatine. I think Mum must have mentioned Palpatine as well. They were talking about, I'm trying to remember if I picked it up correctly.
Yeah, because
they said something about a special splitting of the Senate. Yes,
and I was like, oh my gosh, are we going to get to see him in this episode? And no, they just teased it. We didn't, because I'm like, I'm still holding out, and I guess they know that that's always a possibility, that fans would get excited about that, and if they are going to include it, they'll keep it towards the end. Hopefully not like at the end of the whole series, just towards the end of the season.
We can do Ord Mantell after this, can't we? We can both do it.
What's that? Yes, we can. Yes, because Ord Mantell was mentioned. Yes. Yeah, I was thinking about that at the start of the stream, that we try and pick characters or planets that feel like they would resemble what's in the episode, but there was so much unknown with this episode. I was like, I don't know where we're going to be. We're going to follow Andor, but we didn't know what kind of planet he was going to be on. I didn't actually sort of really, I should have seen the fact that he wasn't going to leave his mother behind, that he would go back for her. But I thought we might see him sort of take a slightly longer route, have to kind of, escape. Yeah. And
I think it was cool though, because what that means is it was her choice, so he didn't abandon her.
Yeah.
But it would have been complicated if their stories continued aligned at this point.
Yeah.
Andor needs to be alone, but if he'd been alone abandoning his mother, that would have been a bit grim. But yeah, Ord Mantell is a planet in Star Wars lore that I've always been a fan of. It was first mentioned in the SB, in reference to the bounty hunter on Ord Mantell. The encounter that Han had before the SB, but it was explored in the comics, specifically in the comics that we got in the New Zealand Women's Weekly back in the day. We actually saw the bounty hunter on Ord Mantell. And obviously the planet and its representation has changed a lot along the way. But Ord Mantell is the starting planet for both troopers and smugglers in this game.
Yeah, which is kind of crazy because, yeah, we didn't know that prior to deciding who we were going to play tonight. It's always fun when they just sort of drop little references in that. I'm really quite enjoying those moments.
Oh, yeah, speaking of references and Easter eggs, we picked up a couple of things that might not have been perfectly visible in Luke and Rail's shop earlier. There's a lot that we've seen over and over. The star killer armor and but I don't know if you saw the and I mean may have seen I can't remember the recurring species name. But you spotted it very clearly. The breather.
Oh yeah, it looked like Plo Koon's sort of mask, just like removed from his face. Yeah, I can never remember. Keldor?
Keldor.
Keldor?
What's that? Keldor, yeah.
Yeah.
You get Keldor in this game as well, so he's easily ripped.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, that was they basically shot.
Because my brain was like, it kind of looked
that.
like a bug.
Yeah.
With sort of spindly legs, and then I was like, oh no, I think I recognize what that is. But yeah, it was from the opposite side. And then towards the back, in one of the shots, you could clearly see a Jedi Temple Guard mask, helmet sort of thing in the back, which was like really cool because I know that's a really popular design. That was exciting to see because that means there's a physical prop out there. Which is really cool. The other thing I was going to bring up
was I don't know how well it may have been visible or subtly visible in previous episodes, but the Jedi Temple Guard was very visible in this episode.
Yeah. Jalari said it was fun getting to see some K2 droids at the end, and David said yes, that was quite brutal. I liked seeing more than one. I think that was kind of fun. That they seem to be because
they're even more sinister on mass.
Yeah.
The one that we saw behind the wall when Andor was being interrogated by the short trooper, it was getting pretty brutal. It was throwing people around.
Yeah. Yeah, we didn't. The one that the first one dropped two people that had sort of been carrying. They didn't look like they moved.
No.
So I don't know if they were just unconscious, or something else. I don't think that they were sort of there for extermination. They definitely look like they were there for sort of, I think the guy said like droid support.
Yeah. It's kind of fun to see how they were used in that way. They're not, I don't think they're sophisticated or overly intelligent units.
Yeah.
In that form, but they are.
Because we heard this one talk, and apart from K2SO, I don't think we've heard them talk before.
No, we definitely haven't. We see them walk past them in Rogue One.
Yeah.
Silently,
looking kind of menacing. But yeah, it's funny how the vibe, like the look is exactly the same, but just those little subtle movements and things like that just give them such a different, they feel so incredibly menacing. Which I guess you kind of knew that K2SO, but because of the sort of the really awesome sort of performance by Alan Tudyk, just had that sort of just a little bit of it wasn't constant humor, but just sort of the droid attitude that I can imagine the Empire doesn't exactly program into their droids.
Yeah, I think a lot of that humor was just a consequence of him responding to Andor and Andor alone, and everyone else not having the same respect from him that Andor gets.
Yeah. I mean, I really can't wait to get the moment where he gets K2.
Yeah. Well, we know Alan Tudyk's, well, I'm pretty sure we're going to see that. Alan Tudyk has previously been announced, and then we were told that K2's appearance was bumped for season 2. Alan Tudyk's got his own show now, so he's fairly busy with that, but between all of that, he's always sought to be very active. He's been involved in little bits and pieces, lots of voice work, and
Yeah.
he did that web series. It's just his own crafting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he
likes to keep busy.
Disney puts him in a lot of things.
Yeah.
So I think, Disney's very happy with him. And I would say that, Disney would be very keen to, even if he didn't do on-set performances, if they got whoever was like, it was, I guess I'm curious to see the behind the scenes if there was an on-set performer for these droids, or whether it would have been just kind of all CG'd in. I don't know. It looked very convincing that there was a giant droid dragging people around.
I think it was probably a motion performer.
Yeah. So they can just use a very similar person.
Yeah.
Or if not the same person. And then use it as his voice performance.
We've seen a lot of that, a lot of situations where characters are actually built up from a number of contributing artists, body doubles as well as voice actors. And
so Larry says, it'll be interesting to see how we get the K2 in Rogue One we know and love. Yeah. With, I guess it'll be interesting if they tease it like right at the end, or if it's solely contained in the next season, how it comes about, whether his experience in this season means that he's kind of like, I need help, a backup, assistance, or whether it's just like a random opportunity that he finds himself in, sort of reprograms a droid to escape somewhere or to get in somewhere. Because I don't want the mother to meet an untimely end, because I don't know that droid would necessarily go with Andor on his adventures. I was worried that something was going to happen, that the stormtroopers were going to find him and there was going to be like some skirmish or something like that. And I was glad it wasn't.
Yeah, I'm still worried that the mother's death might be the turning point for Andor.
That might what? Sorry?
I'm still worried that the mother's death might be a turning point for Andor. That might be what it takes.
Yeah.
For him to go full rebel.
Yeah. She definitely gave off the vibe that she's like, she said something about sick of just sitting around waiting to die or something. That I feel like that she wants to finally kind of fight back in a bit in sort of retaliation for her husband's death. And just for everything else the Empire's done. I'll go do the last one.
Yep.
I still get such a good vibe from this show. Just in terms of like the design, the look, the locations. I think it's really fun. We've got some new alien species on the resort planet. We're keen to sort of go through that a little slower and take a look, see if there are any sort of existing ones or they're all just new.
Yeah, even on Coruscant we saw one or two. There was an insect-looking person, woman.
Yeah, it's definitely the sort of show that we do enjoy going through and watching again. Just to pick up on all those details and stuff like that.
I do always love, and there was something that we missed of just a shade in the sequel trilogy. I do always love seeing reference to established species.
Yeah. Getting things like hammerheads or monkhows or Rhodians and
I saw one of the Pisana aliens on the bus.
Yes. Yeah, in the background.
Yeah. Got off the bus after Western Rails talking to the random dude.
Sorry, this fight's actually a little more heavy hitting than I thought.
Oh yeah, I kind of like this one, so it's a bit of fun.
Yeah.
It feels like you choose something if you get through them.
Yeah.
There's got a couple of actual Andor themed things in this game as of this morning.
Yes. Some new weapons and things like that inspired by the weapons in Andor, which is quite cool. I'm hoping
a few more.
I would love, I mean, just as a random thing, personally for me, I loved the sort of Coruscant glam dinner that Mon Mothma had. I really enjoyed those scenes. And I was glad to just like see her sort of like have a moment of relief when he was like, "Oh, I don't know that you'd like my political leanings," and then when she realized,
he said he just lost his love for the Empire, something along those lines.
Yeah.
But presumed that she was still
because she's on Coruscant, and that's basically the heart of the Empire. You know, living the sort of the sort of as it would be sort of Palpatine's inner circle almost. You know, and because he obviously is. With the conversation. Yeah. And when she found out,
it meant because he proffered that information without prompt, it meant she could trust him.
Yes, yeah, it was kind of one of those like, who's going to go first? Who's going to admit they're secretly not? You know,
that way, it would have been really weird for her. That
yeah, I feel like this is somebody that she can trust. Because I was really going to be worried if you should be like, hey, yeah, I'm actually like not a fan. I'm going to like undermine everything. But I loved the sort of the resolution in her voice where she's like been carefully crafting sort of the Mon Mothma that's not real. Everyone expects me to be this kind of smile and stuff and just be a subtle nuisance by doing just sort of charity work and just, you know, but that she's actually got, you know, huge sort of plans afoot. Using her sort of charity work and all that kind of stuff as a big front and a distraction. And the fact that she openly admitted that she couldn't trust her husband to somebody else.
Yeah. That was
a big movement. She's just like, smile, he doesn't know anything. I can't trust him. It's like, oh, you feel really sad for her.
It wasn't just that he doesn't know anything, it was that she couldn't trust him. She could have just played it. Or the story could have just been that.
And she seems like she doesn't have a close relationship with her daughter as well. The daughter was like sort of over by the father, sort of, you know, whispering, and the father's like, oh, you have to check with your mother because, you know, she's the sort of the you know, the one that they're the two of them sort of gang up on. And yeah, the daughter sort of wanted out because of the way that she was talking. I don't know if this was specifically, I think this was perhaps a political party that she put on. She seemed a little bit more at ease, but the husband was certainly talking to people because we know from the previous episode that the husband had put on some sort of dinner party that she did not particularly like. So I assume this was perhaps a little bit of a mix of just sort of society folk and wasn't solely political.
Really not that public.
I know, it's just like, good grief.
Yeah. It's really like.
But I love her costumes, and I would love to have something like hers in this game. As like a random aside, I think they're super pretty.
Yeah, there is a little bit of a lack of elegant apparel in the game.
I nearly used my other smuggler that's wearing a long purple formal dress as her outfit. Yep. I was nearly going to bring her tonight, and I was like, oh, dread it, I could have, but that's okay.
Yeah.
Next week.
Speaking of things going over here, like that helicopter, I did like seeing the full scene from the trailer of the Star Destroyer over the planet. Because that was clearly, we knew that was coming from the trailer.
Yeah.
And we've seen Star Destroyers in, you know,
sort of atmosphere
to the surface and on Jeddah, but I still like it. It's cool.
Which makes sense. We're probably going to see, like, I guess perhaps they're just bringing like a huge vehicles and stormtroopers and all the rest, you know, to sort of, they realize that they left that one perhaps little undefended.
Yeah, definitely.
And yeah, they're bringing out the big guns to protect.
But Star Destroyers being used as for intimidation in that way. It always kind of gives me a whole alien invasion vibe and all that sort of stuff. Like.
Mm. But it's interesting how swiftly the Empire sort of reacted to it. You think that they would be careful not to make themselves look too angry about simply sort of a bank robbery. That, you know, like it would giving more credit to the rebels was sort of upsetting them, you know. But I guess that's the whole point. Luthen Rail knew that they were going to react like that.
Yeah,
and,
they're going to go heavy-handed, otherwise it's going to happen again.
And
they thought they had things under control, but they clearly don't.
Yeah. And the way that they start cracking down, we saw that very real sort of example of the fact that the woman was like, this used to be a 6-month sentence, now it's 6 years. So I'm really not sure where we're going to go next week. As fans of kind
7, I think we are getting the start of another 3-episode story arc, which will be 8, 9, and 10, and then 11 and 12 will be a closing chapter. So whatever happens next week, I think it's going to have a different time. Yeah, I don't know where it's going to be with Andor in prison. I've got no idea where it's going to be.
Like, surely he's going to have to get out of prison fairly quickly. I can't imagine the story would progress unless he teams up with somebody in prison to escape, finds perhaps another sort of collaborator. What's that, sorry?
Or is Luthen Rail going to break him out?
Yeah.
I don't know.
He seemed to be really rattled when he was asking,
actually, on that
the
note,
friend, it was like, how does he know everything about me?
Yeah.
He seemed sort of annoyed that he was not aware that there was somebody that knew so much about him.
He wasn't doing anything overtly criminal, just trying to lay low and relax, chill. But he was doing something with, was it a comms device or something, or that he hid in the shower?
Yeah, and in his sort of briefcase of money.
Yeah, was that
with a blaster and stuff like that? Yeah. I know there was blasters. He was kind of checking, but yeah, because he was pulling out a few Imperial credits from there. Because don't know at this point, like, whether all money is kind of stamped Imperial because it's the Galactic Empire, or only sort of money for actually internal Imperial stuff looks like that. I assume he's spending it freely, so I guess it just looks like regular money. But yeah, we saw him sort of pulling a few sort of gold bars out of a secret briefcase. Oh, we didn't click on the one that we just did. There we go. So we can head to Ord Mantell for a quick run round.
Yeah, let's do that.
I've got to do it from the fleet. Silly. I was like looking at it on the list going, where is it? Yeah, not as much action in this one, but I get that I always knew that we'd sort of have a little bit of a story development moment after the big action sequence in the previous episode. Then we sort of get this lull as we kind of, everyone finds their feet after the dust settle, and then we sort of see how everybody reacted to what happened in that last one.
It wasn't sustained action, but things did happen.
Oh, yes.
The flashback to Clem and the clone troopers.
They looked real.
Yeah, well, we know that there's from Obi-Wan Kenobi, we know that there's clone trooper armor now, and Hasbro announced. Interesting, that Hasbro announced or revealed the Black Series Phase 2 clone trooper helmet today.
Yes.
We knew they announced that a few days back at the Hasbro Pulse online event, but we got pictures of it today.
A video showing it in sort of in movement.
And I think it is subtly different from the Ep3 clone trooper helmets, but I think that is solely because it needs to fit on real human heads.
Yes.
Because Ep3 prequel was all CG helmets, but Obi-Wan Kenobi, they did make physical helmets and physical clone trooper armor for stunt performers to wear. And I need to go back and compare some of those images to see if this new Hasbro helmet is more accurate to the physical clone troopers that we're seeing in the Disney Plus material.
You got
yeah,
all those?
there was quite a. Which one?
You got all of them?
Yeah, I've got 3.
We'll go to buying loyalty first.
It's fun seeing the clone troopers as well as the stormtroopers.
Mm.
I was talking about action, so yeah, the clone troopers were action of a sort, but the interaction with the KX droids was definitely action and tension.
Trying to think if there's anything else I wanted to note. There's so much stuff going on in this one. Like in previous ones, I've like tried to keep notes so I could remember every little thing. I really do. I think it's interesting the way that they keep the Imperial sort of officer meetings so interesting. I really like that character and sort of I love the look on her face when the other guy basically got his comeuppance, the telling off that, she actually got assigned the thing, because he seemed to
She got his sector, yeah.
Yeah, he seemed to be more interested in basically keeping his position and his portfolio of sectors than he was about potentially discovering rebel activity. And I think she perhaps knew that would prevail. That at the end of the day, there might be infighting in the Imperial sector, but they care about, doing their job right.
Right.
And he looked quite dejected, and she got basically the heads up that people are going to be gunning for you.
Not over. Yeah.
Especially if he sort of recruits a few of his fellows to basically try and undermine her, because he'll start whispering in people's ear like, she took my portfolio, she's gunning for yours next, or something like that, and sort of makes a few enemies. But then I feel like her story is actually going to uncover Luthen Rael's sort of organization, what he's trying to do, keeping everything looking random.
Okay. Before we kill the next mob, just going to point out for anyone that's watching that's not familiar, this is Ord Mantell. We transitioned to it, but these dudes that were shooting the Savrips, Mantellian Savrips, based on the Deseret chess pieces from the Hollow Chess game. It's another thing that I always found kind of fun.
I kind of wish we could have one as like a companion, a beast companion.
Separate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They'd like the Nathema Vorclaw in a way, sort of big and hulking. That'd be kind of fun. Because you can't ride them like as a mount, so companion would be good. Because there is a claw slug companion.
Yeah, which is one of the other Deseret pieces. And it's always funny they had to base these guys on the canon appearance, so they're beasts, but they wear waistcoats.
Yeah.
What is Gizmo? Nope. The mission is cheap.
Okay.
Stupid.
But yeah, another great episode. I don't know where it's gonna go, because we see another thing.
Yeah, I'm not far.
Yeah, like I'm not one of those kind of people that tries to sort of predict or guess where the storyline is going, what's going to happen next. I mean, some writing is kind of obvious and you can see what's going to happen. Romantic comedies, 99% of the time they're going to end up together no matter what sort of strife they end up in. But this show, I don't know. All we know really is that he can't die because he's in Rogue One, but everything else, it's sort of up in the air, and I think that gives it a really interesting sort of tension in a way that the Obi-Wan series didn't, because the Obi-Wan series was so closely centered on Obi-Wan and Leia, who we know don't sort of, meet their fate at that point in time. That there's like an interesting tension here because we just don't know if it's sort of, if everyone sort of feels in jeopardy. And I think it's really good at sort of giving us a vibe of what the galaxy feels like in this time. That we possibly even didn't get in Rogue One. We got a little bit of a vibe of Rogue One, but this feels more menacing. For the actual people on the ground, how the Empire is affecting day-to-day lives and families, and just sort of seeing how brutal it is. In Rogue One, we know what the Empire is doing. We see the rebels try and sort of attack them, and then obviously in the actual conflict and fights, and the rebels are fully established at that point. When in that earlier episode when Mon Mothma was talking about somebody she wanted to bring in, I thought that was maybe like a nod that they were going to bring in, like she was going to allude to somebody, and then a few episodes down it was going to be somebody that we were familiar with.
Yeah, I think that was.
But I think that was in reference to the senator that we see here.
Oh yeah, well, the Chandrilan banker. He's from Chandrila.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm still wondering if we will see in this episode the likes of Bail, or whether they'll keep that later. Because
they pulled Yularen out of the bag, so we could see some Republic equivalent, Rebel equivalents. But they may say that till season 2 as well. Season 2 is a lot closer to the events of Rogue One. Once we get to that point, we're going to have to see recognizable faces, or at least recognizable characters from the Yavin based sort of scenario.
This is the first show where we kind of have a more tight bookend to take into account. We knew Obi-Wan was going to be bookended by sort of like the episode 3 and episode 4, but this one feels like, because we know it's going to sort of, it's all like because we started out at 5 years before the Battle of Yavin, which is clearly a little bit after the Battle of Scarif, that Andor's story is all going to be told in the space of less than 5 years, which is quite tight, and we know exactly where it's going to sort of lead into. So it's kind of, really interesting storytelling. It feels like we don't really know what's going to happen, even though we know he ends up in a way that I didn't quite get with Kenobi. Sort of felt like I knew where the story was going to go with Kenobi. But I guess that's because it was written as a very short story arc. This one sort of feels like...
And the story didn't feel big for Kenobi. It felt big on a personal level, but it felt big on galactic levels.
Which is interesting, because Andor's just following Andor predominantly. We're getting a little bit of other things. And Kenobi followed Kenobi predominantly, but we got some other... We got, moments of Bail and Brea together that Kenobi was obviously not privy to, but we sort of get these other little other snippets in there and stuff like that, and the Inquisitors and their infighting and stuff like that. So we had other things to focus on, but this one, it has a very different feel. It's interesting to see how, we're getting these different vibes with the TV shows. And it's almost a shame, because we know that this one can't just stretch on indefinitely. We know there's a finite point. It's good to know that there isn't just one season and done, because I'm really enjoying this, and at least it's kind of, all but guaranteed, filming the second one and all that kind of stuff. But I wish, I hope that Disney retains these showrunners and perhaps, gives them another project to do under the Star Wars banner.
Yeah.
Because I'm really enjoying this take, especially if this is their sort of first Disney Plus series production based in the UK. All of the others so far, like Mando and Book of Boba Fett and Obi-Wan, are all based in California. So it'll be interesting to see if they're like, okay, maybe... the vibe of doing things in the UK with that base production, doing things on sets and locations. It might not be every series that they can afford to kind of, build with a bigger budget. But I think it works. And I hope that they see the value in that and give them another project to work on.
That would be good.
Yeah. Is that you over there or somebody else? Where are you? You're in your speeder. Sorry, your nameplate disappeared when you're in your speeder. It just looks like like I just got out my walker and you're just sitting there. It's kind of funny. I can't even click on you.
Really?
Yeah. What? Like I can't.
Didn't know that would happen. But...
There you are. Right. Yeah. Yeah, because this is my walker, my load lifter.
It must. I wonder if that means that I can't click on. I can't see myself either. I wonder if that means that I'm switched off. The character's actually switched off with this particular walker. It doesn't have an internal cockpit.
Yeah.
Anyway, so some of them do. This does not. Not zoom into the camera because you can't physically fit in there. Yeah. Anyway, I like this walker. Yeah. Might wrap things up there for now. Go watch it again ourselves.
Yeah.
Yeah, the week between episodes is a slow week.
But we'll have the Tales of the Jedi soon.
I was just going to mention that. And we've got finally run times for those. Yeah, between 10 and 17 minutes. So for 6 episodes, we're going to get a little over an hour of actual consumable
And that's
content.
all down at once.
Yeah. And early reports, because there are a few people that have seen all of them, that it's very good. That's very layered and emotive.
Cool. Sounds good. Looking forward to that. Fill at least one of the gaps between weekly Andor episodes. I'm going to be sad when this Andor series finishes and then we've got a bit of a gap for the next one. But yeah. I guess that's it for tonight. Gonna go watch it again. Yeah. So thank you all for coming, for your comments in the chat, and just for coming along and listen to us talk about Star Wars. We love sort of digesting it slowly, sort of talking about it backwards and forwards. It helps to sort of really sink in and sort of think about the details and stuff like that as a way to sort of really enjoy it and fill the time before next week. So thank you all for joining in. If you want more Star Wars content from us, we'll be streaming SWTOR here on Twitch. We've also got a YouTube channel, Villa Varakino, over there. If you want to check out some of our other Star Wars content, like we do unboxings and video games and stuff like that. All Star Wars fun. So from both of us, thank you so much for coming along and watching us. And catch you next time. And may the Force be with you.
It's next time.
If you enjoyed this video, go ahead and give it a like, check out our other videos, and subscribe for alerts about new uploads. Thanks for watching, and may the Force be with you.